smart. You know, I really got on with him. He was very clever, sort of, you know, sharp boy, and you could have a conversation with him. And I think, you know, he was John's eyes and ears a lot of the time. You know, he introduced John Lydon to a lot of music, like Peter Hamill and stuff like that. I think, you know, I was down to Gray because he'd go out and John Gray would go and buy a lot of different sort of musics, and was into you know, very adventurous, thoughtful kind of musical taste. You know, not exactly up my street, you know, but a big Can fan, for instance, and all that stuff. You know, so I was really into Philly. Was another big thing that I was into. You know.
So when Sid turned up, he's like more of a Bowie type point, I guess, isn't he?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, he was really into that. He wasn't really into football, and it was really weird. I did a radio documentary on him because I saw so much shit spoken about him over the years. Well, just this kind of icon stuff where people would talk about him as a kind of caricature. And actually, it was very interesting that when he'd come, one of my oldest mates, this is typical of London, I didn't even know when he come back to London from Ibiza with his mum, because he was, first of all, I think he was born in the West End, or certainly lived in the West End. See, he went to primary school near Piccadilly Circus, and I think he was living in Covent Garden. That was when Covent Garden was still a pretty dilapidated market area. It was always a bit of a slummy area actually at the time, the Hogarth even, and all that, you know, you know, around there was quite, you know, Seven Dials and all that. It wasn't upmarket thing. And they were living there, and then I think they moved to somewhere like Tunbridge Wells, and they went to Ibiza, and then I think Tunbridge Wells and Bristol, and then back to London. Anyway, whatever. My mate Terry Hendon, when he was about 15, he put him up because Sid had been kicked out by his mum, and Terry put him up. You know, looked after him. So I didn't know that for years. I looked about Terry for a long. I didn't even know, you know. And I ended up doing a documentary and found out a lot about it. It was interesting, like going back. I met Sid when I'm like 16 or something, and it was interesting finding out, like a movie, what had happened with him in the 2 years or so before he met me, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise just how much he'd been taken under the wing. Terry had looked after him, and also a bloke called Billy Dolan and another bloke called Vince Bracken. So he ended up kind of coming back to London, living in Hackney, Queensbridge Road. So he goes to the local comprehensive school, it's pretty rough, and he's having a hard time. And they're good blokes. They looked after him, you know, and they looked after him and made sure he was kind of all right. And even then, they would tell you how he was dressed like Ziggy Stardust. He would completely all the makeup and everything, really, which a lot of people were. I mean, Bowie was a really big news at that time. You know,
So you must have looked quite an odd combination of characters.
Yeah, I was just, you know, working class looking youth, you know.
But you're all completely different.
Yeah. And then the punk thing started, and everyone used to go to a hairdresser's called Smile to get their hair shaved, and have to get together 10 times to go and rate. You could have gone up the local barber and got it done, really, but just bloke with Smile in Knightsbridge. Just a fucking number one, right, you know. And although I must admit, there's number ones and number ones. You've got good ones, you know, you've got to do it properly. As the Turkish ones do a good job, in my estimation, you know. And then Dyke Blue and all that, so we started doing that. And I already knew people that I knew, like the girl I was with at the time, she was very trendy, and she was going up to King's Road and going in what was called Sex then, you know, McLaren's shop. So I already knew a little bit about that.
So did you go to Sex Shop 75?
Yeah.
So what was that?
Because I'd creep about. I mean, I was going up round, you know, I'd go to soul clubs, and my mate Ronnie would knock about, and I'd go down there. All the girls used to go to Beaver's, and they'd robbed it blind, because I think they didn't have any security. So every girl in there weren't shoplifters. It was like, it's so easy, you know, so they'd have all the makeup away, and I mean, they had lovely clothes, Beavers, really sexy, chic, sort of, you know, the girls, you know. And I'd go to second-hand stores, and I still do. 20 quid for the suit, it was 2 pairs of trousers.
Oh, yeah.
In Oxfam in Grammar. Yeah, so
Very good.
It's one thing, I'm a spendthrift, but I don't like spending top money on, you know, so yeah. I play the percentage game, you just go in until you get something that fits or can be ordered, bosh.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah. So I still do, so I'd go to second-hand places, I've always done that, you know.
So when the punk thing started emerging, how much of a part of it, were you? You just kind of, obviously you were in there, but were you kind of like a bit suspicious of it, or were you kind of really into it?
Well, no, I was getting a bit bored of Kingsway, and you know, I ended up kind of getting out there. And so the punk thing I was intrigued in, when John come back one day and then disappeared for a couple of days. And I said, where you been? He said, I'm in a band. And I said, what? Because at that time, working class kids wouldn't be in bands. It was that era, that horrible era you had before the music had been grabbed by the middle classes, as it is periodically, you know. And it was all about being, they're all right, total utter wankers, a lot of them, long hair, uninteresting, playing that pompous, ridiculous kind of rock with loads of solos, no groove, you know. There was exceptions, but generally speaking. Like, I like Gone, funny enough, from that time. I thought Gone, Steve Village, and actually I've worked with him, and he's a good producer. You know, he's kind of for real.
Gone was still really good.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good producer. I played him a couple of times. A good, proper producer. Anyway, so working class kids would tend to sort of wouldn't learn a guitar or an instrument. That was beyond them, you know. It's always, we're always close, as we're doing now, in my estimation, to going back into the 19th century, where middle class, where it's the preserve of the middle classes to play an instrument the way they would have learned in cello or learned to speak French. You know, the overseers of the post-industrial revolution who lived in big houses in Withington or wherever the fuck area, you know, in those massive houses, and they would learn French and, you know, learn to play the cello. That was for you. And the underclass go and drink gin and fuck off and watch football or something, you know. You know. So and that was the vibe. So for him to say that was a bit like, so I said, what are you doing? Oh, I'm learning to fly a 747. You know. So it was quite intriguing.
What was his attitude to being in a band? I mean, it's not like he's going to run off and do it properly, is it? Does he kind of think it's quite funny being in a band, or was he quite serious about it?
I think he was a bit nervy. I think he was very excited because we weren't conformists, and we all wanted to have fun. You know, all I wanted to have fun. You want at that age, I think you want lots of sex, and you want to have nice clothes, and what you don't want is dull routine. Well, people like me, you know, maverick kind of figures, you know. You wasn't thinking of kind of the way other people, probably quite rightly at that age, thinking of career path or something, or some logical progression. It's just all I wanted was my immediate needs satisfied, which is probably a lot of psychotherapists would tell you it's quite unhealthy. Unfortunately, at 55, I'm still like that. Just want a nice dinner, you know, a bit of the other, you know. Sorry, I'm giving too much information. I still want what I fucking want when I fucking want it.
Yeah. A good name for an album.
Yeah, but at least I know I'm very selfish, so I do actively kind of try and do stuff for other people. It makes me through gritted teeth. But
So John's in the band, and
yeah.
So did you go and see him pretty early on?
Yeah, early on, and it was great because he was just one of his mates about, I suppose, to create that, make him feel secure and sort of ambience. And of course, to us, it was just. I remember talking to Vince about this fairly recently, and for us, we sometimes think too much is all made of it. To us, just. It was like this thing that was really good fun. It started in '75 really, this first kind of that precursor to it, and '75 was a very interesting year actually. You know, and there was good clubs in London, and you know, and then by the summer of '76 it's really going, and so it really started in the maybe sort of, you know, spring of that year really, and by '77 it was already getting a bit. You know, a lot of yobby kind of blokes. It became a bit of a bloke scene, you know, and it was all a bit dark and boozy and people fighting, and it wasn't, you know. So at its peak, it was just about 9 or 10 months really, but very intense, very, very intense. And I'd never knock it because if it hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now, John. You know, no way, you know. And I'm still part of that generation. I've still got that kind of personality. That's a bit self-centered, not really, a very narcissistic personality as far as I'm concerned, to be honest, you know. At least when you know it, you can kind of work with it, you know, a bit, you know, but I'm still kind of impulsive. I'm still very fiercely independent. I can't be waiting for corporations to get their acting gear. Oh, fuck off, just do it yourself, you know. So I still release my own records and just make things happen in your own way, you know.
Which is very much the best part of the punk spirit, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
So when John joined the Pistols, Sid was obviously not happy about this, was he? Because I always read this, but he kind of thought he'd be the obvious one they would have chosen.
I just think, yeah, I mean, it's understandable if your mate gets in something.
Well, he's the obvious one.
I can really identify with that. I've always think that be, you know, it was by a gig, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think he was, there was all that, I don't know how true, that it was Vivian Westwood thought that was the John she wanted or something, I don't know. But I mean,
he's the obvious choice for a rock star, because he does have...
Well, I don't know, I think to be honest, you know, John really had something about him.
He did, but not the conventional way. You're really thinking out the box to choose him to be the singer, which was a stroke of genius.
Well, I don't know, for me, he was the most charismatic person I'd ever met at that point, to be honest. So he's really charismatic. Bit of an awkward fuck-up, even then, you know. I mean, you know, but he was very charismatic, you know, and he really was somebody who people were drawn towards. Some people would be, you know, like, a bit slightly, it kind of couldn't quite work him out, but enough people would be kind of drawn to him, and he really had that. I don't think anyone else could have been Johnny Rotten, you know, really, you know. He had that thing on stage, and he looked fantastic for a while. For a little while there, he was just looked absolutely superb, you know. He'd wear his clothes really well, and he had that real kind of manic intensity on stage that Sid wouldn't have been able to do. But Sid, in his own way, is a really interesting character, great humour, and just an interesting sort of character. And a bit lost. I mean, that was the thing in the documentary. I did feel a real part of making when I'm making that radio documentary about Sid was because I kind of felt, God, I feel quite empty towards Sid, and I shouldn't, because I did knock about him a fair bit. And but why do I feel so empty? And when I kind of investigated it, I was able to feel some compassion, you know, especially when via John Savage, the writer who did England's Dreaming, of course, he very, very generously gave me access to his archives, and he actually had a recording of Sid's mum talking about Sid, and she didn't even know. John said, oh, he went to Kingsway. Oh, people fucking say, no, I don't fucking know. I don't. I think she was in Derbyshire, I think, or somewhere like that. She wasn't a Londoner to start with. And she was kind of saying, no, he never, I would have known if he had. So, and he fucking did, because I went there with him. You know? So she didn't even know, and there was a thing on there with her saying, I fucking kicked him out. And he said, but Mum, he's at 15. Where would I go? I don't fucking care. Sleep on a park bench for all I care. So he was very sort of damaged. She had a drug problem, of course, as well, you know. So it's, you know, wasn't. And God bless her. I mean, it's not, you know, heavy. No one chooses. People are impelled by their karma, I think, really, in these situations. You know, sure, free will ultimately doesn't come into that. It does in terms of changing how you behave in this moment and seeing that then influences the next moment. Clearly seeing, having some view on that. But it's very difficult to do that when your thinking's very clouded for whatever reason. So you have to have compassion for people, you know. But, so I think he was of course he was upset when John got the gig, but still he had enough about him to get lashings of attention from everybody, you know. So yeah.
Was it quite shocking for you the way he kind of went? You know, he became suspicious, picks up this persona, which is not really him, is it? He wasn't a fighter, was he?
No, he wasn't really. You know, I mean, he did. He was. I mean, Terry would say. I don't remember him. I remember him sort of. He would put his hands up, and Terry remembers him. He would fight back at people, but he'd get kind of bashed. He said he was quite game, and he did with Terry once. I mean, he went at Terry. Terry stabbed him in the neck at a party with a meat fork in the neck, I think. Obviously not fatal, you know, or anything. And in self-defence, as I understand it, you know, and all that. But you know, Terry, and I don't think their relationship was quite the same after that. So, you know, but he had that junky kind of thing. I would call the junky thing, very dark, very hopeless, and he would talk then of death, but wanting to die young. And here's a kind of a dark thing that happened. He was going to see a psychiatrist, like a counsellor, every week, because they were obviously concerned with him. They knew, you know, he needed help. And I don't remember really focusing on that. And a lot of the people I knew were kind of wayward, so it wasn't something that kind of wasn't a big deal. and he asked me to accompany him to see his psychiatrist, his counsellor guy that he was seeing. The counsellor guy had asked Sid to bring me, because he said, who do you hang about with, who's your best friend at the moment, or whatever, and it was me. And he wanted me to go because Sid had told him he wanted to kill himself. So it's all a bit in jest, but actually many a true word said in jest. So this guy's rightly very concerned that Sid, aged 18 or something, says he wants to kill himself. So Sid invites me to go, and at that point he was still John Beverley's, you know. So I go to see this shrink with him sitting here, and he said, John, you know, your friend John, he says to me, you know, says he has nothing to live for and wants to kill himself, and you're his friend, and I want you to tell him that that's not true. And I said, ooh, I don't know about that. We were both really deadpan. It was horrible, really. And I said, well, to be honest, I'm sitting more from his point of view. I don't think he has. He's got no money, and I think he might be happier, and I think the world might be, you know. And Sid was going to him, and he actually got quite indignant. And I remember him going about movies. You've got movies, and there's so many interesting things. He said, go and see a movie, and he's on board. And it was at that point really playing up to it. Left this bloke very frustrated. He was very angry with me and the whole situation, you know. So,
It must be a psychologist.
Yeah, we come out, and we were fantastic. We were so deadpan because we just totally straight faces. And when we got out, we were laughing. He said, that's fantastic.
So during the punk period, what were you doing now? You know, before obviously the public image line up. You kind of hang around with John and.
No, before Peel started. So, as I say, 76 hot summer. I come up here for the first time, actually, in Manchester. And my first memory of Manchester is in a fucking heatwave. Can you believe that? It weren't raining. But now I live here, I know fucking the wettest place on earth, you know. Anyway, so it was really hot, and then I was doing that. I did all manner of jobs, you know. I remember working on a building site. I was told to dig an hole, be careful, there was a pipe. I burst the fucking pipe, bloody it got sacked, you know. Like any other. And I was asked, people asked me to be in bands, I didn't take it seriously. I'd knock around that scene with the squats.
Were you actually playing anything at this point? Did you pick up the bass?
I started playing in 77, I was in a squat because I'd left home young, you know, because my old man said, right, give us £20 a week, I'll sling your rook. Which is, you know, fair enough. You don't want to play the game, go and get an education, fuck off. Which is fair enough, really. And I did. So, and I ended up in a few places. I ended up in a squat in a borough in South London. I got hold of a bass, cheap Music Man copy, really high action, had an amp and a lead, sold the amp and the lead to get a bit of beer money. Just met the geezer here somewhere from Jesus and Mary chain. That geezer, I ain't seen him since I sold him my bass. He took advantage of a struggling alcoholic looking for beer money. But he bought me, I'm joking. And he bought my bass off me, so I bought when I finally got a good bass, I sold it to that geezer. But anyway, this cheap Music Man copy. And I'd lean it against the headboard of the bed. Didn't have legs on the bed because we'd chopped it up to burn it. We chopped the furniture up, put it in the fire. It was freezing fucking cold, you know, and upset the people I shared the squat with, to be honest. But anyway, I was in the end left alone there, and I hold it against the bed and, you know, and play. And because it was such an awkward action, it actually taught me, it was like a really good way to play. A lot of players you find from poor backgrounds learn that kind of way. The Elastic Band, Hassan, the guitarist I was playing with yesterday in Morocco, we just made a one-string instrument because he was so, you know, that's how. And he said every week his brother used to break it, which is horrible. And in the end, his big brother felt sorry for him and said, "I bought him a guitar." You know. Okay. Anyway, so that was it. So.
But you didn't learn conventionally, did you? Because I remember you telling me the way you write bass lines, you write them in shapes.
I mean, shapes, yeah, because I got a book on how to learn to play bass, to read the music, and the first one in the book was American Patrol by Glenn Miller. And I quite like Glenn Miller, actually, believe it or not, so I thought, oh, fuck this. Yeah, I'm not going to learn that. What a load of bollocks. Which was probably a good decision. And I just thought, right, okay, here you go, 4 strings. Here I'm trying to put some kind of, make some sense of this instrument. I don't know anything about music or harmony, so it was a visual thing. Like this 4 strings, I like the feeling of it, the deep bass. I like the open E string, I like the open strings, it feels very satisfying. And there's the dots. And so I made shapes, I made lines, I played geometrically. And by so doing, I didn't know for a very long time, but I was playing modes, medieval modes, if you like, you know. This sort of music that is, you know, everything in medieval age tended to be very fixed cosmology, fixed notes, very fixed forms, you know. And I'm a medieval kind of a guy, I'm very fixed, you know. An idea in my mind, it tends to be fixed, you know. And that's how I played.
Yeah, like you play a triangle, you go there to there to there to there.
Yeah, I play an octave, so you've got an octave there. So pop tones, if I had a bass I could show you, you know, it's like a triangle, where it's like, you know, you're in a lovely shape, octave, octave, and then back again, and then you've got the big another octave with a little chromatic thing, you know, and it's just very symmetrical shape on the bass. And that was it. So I mean, to answer your question, yeah, it was getting 77. I don't know, I must have been 18, I think, something like that, 18 years of age, and going into 78, and nothing much going on. I had to get out of the squat, doing various jobs, not happy, and really at a point where I'm a NEET, not in education, employment or training, you know, and I end up back home for Christmas. They let me back in because we got kicked out of the squad, you know. Somehow council took it back or something, and whatever. And we ended up, I ended up back home, and the 2 weeks turned into a couple of months. They were really getting fed up with me again. And I got a phone call from John. I went down to Wally's, the local shop, which had a big picture of Bobby Moore in West Ham, a way strip on the wall. I went down to get a paper, and that's on the Daily Mirror. I saw the Pistols had split. Yeah. And I think I went back home and I got a call off John. I know a little while later, he said, "Do you want to be in a band?" And you want to play bass, and that's how Public Image started. He said, "Keith's over here." So I met Keith.
Did you know Keith from before, like the scene?
Yeah, I met him at, I think he says I met him at, because we lived in Edmonton. My mate Ronnie, my oldest, I used to knock about with all the time, and he was supposed to marry a girl out of Edmonton, and they had a house over there ready for him to move into. He never actually married her. I moved in, and then John moved in, Johnny Lydon. I think he had to get out of his house, you know, with his mum and dad, like years, you know, 76, 77 or what, because although he was in the Pistols, he wasn't getting any money. Yeah. So he ended up over there, because he said, "I need a place." I said, "Well, Nate's got a gap to come," and so he stayed over there with us, and yeah, we stayed in Edmonton, and so we were there for a while, and you know, various sort of places, and anyway, Keith said I met him there, but I'm pretty sure I met him before that at the squat in Maidaville, you know, I'm sure of that, you know, that's when I'd be playing Sid's bass, you know.
What was your relationship with Keith like at that time? Has he always been the same?
He was always friendly, he was always a friendly guy, you know. To me, you know, he was friendly, and we got on, and just, you know, like, I found an interesting character. He was a bit different to the other people there. I realise now he was well educated. You know, at that time, if you were public school educated, you were probably best off to kind of hide it a bit, to merge in. Now, they just rule the world again, like the 1930s. In that time, you kind of hide it a bit, you know. And I think he was very educated, very, you know, very. I think he went to the same school as the Dimbleby brothers and all that, you know. And his real name was Julian, you know. You know. But they're fantastic public school boys and girls at reinventing themselves, and they're really very bright. They're educated. They know how to adapt and all that. And he used, obviously, he obviously was a kid who's been well educated musically, although he'd never say that because it wasn't punk, right? Yeah. So he didn't say that. But he had a flair for music and an idea for music, and had some good taste as well. And so we just hit it off because I was coming with this very instinctive approach, and he had this quite cerebral approach, quite clever, you know. And it was just basically, I mean, as my mate, somebody else put it the other week, like the other month, and we were talking about this, it was, these are these three oddballs you've got kind of knocking around London at that time, Johnny Lydon, me, Keith, you know, forms a band, and, you know, it just kind of works.
Yeah, it's three very different characters, but somehow it really fits together perfectly.
Very well, yeah.
For two albums.
Two albums,
yeah. I mean, was there any kind of master plan what the sound was going to be, or was you just basically just started playing it?
I had a very fixed idea, which I've still got, which when I played bass I fancied the job, you know. I would go and, the best gig I ever went to see, I went to see Bob Marley at the Lyceum in '75. He was doing Natty Dread, you know, with the Eye Freeze. And it was fantastic. To this day, it's the best concert I've ever seen by a country mile. It was incredible. And I watched Aston Fanny Man, Barrett playing bass, you know, it was with power coming from the bass. And I used to see groups like the Cimarrons, there was Afro rock bands, there was a lot of South African musicians in London at that time because of the apartheid system. So I started seeing these bands with great bass players, and that's your real education. You're just getting the feel for the instrument, you know, and I just was already going to blues dances with Ronnie. So we'd go down into blues dances, and that was something we were doing very young, before I'd even met John, I think even, we'd go into blues things, me and Ron. And that was the bass would be, whoa, you know, that really heavy duty, you know, sort of bottom end stuff, which really developed more and more through the 70s, you know. So I had all that going on. So I was bringing that, for me, bass was a visceral thing, it was a physical thing as much as, I was just interested in getting it as low as possible, you know, and it's like an emanation. And so I was very instinctive, and I just fancied the job. I could do lines, I can still groove. One day I'll probably lose that, but I can really hit a groove, you know. The only other thing I did that I can remember that was similar to that, for just being at ease with it, was clay pigeon shooting. And I was with me, you know, years ago, you know, now, and I was with my missus, and we went clay. It was like, I'm in Scotland, so you do daft tourists, you go fishing, do things you never normally do, you know, and went clay pigeon shooting, and said, yeah, I've never done it before. And the bloke got the hump on me, because he said, why'd you say you haven't done it before, you have? And I said, mate, I haven't, but I was just, even the rabbit ones, there were doing rabbit ones along the ground, and I was, you know, just had an idea for it. Also, when I played golf, I was pretty good, which really scared me, because I know loads of golf tossers. And yet again, you get involved in something, you're never going to reach perfection with it. So, you know, I'd wear them jumpers, and you talk about bogeys and birdies and fuck that. So I got afraid, in the way that I did with heroin. When I took heroin once, we would get up the West End with a few of my pals, and of course the sneaky daily geezer, oh man, do you want to see something, you know? And I had some, snorted it, we did, and they were all spewing up, and I was just sitting there. I remember just sitting there, and he said, you've done this before, haven't you? And and I was just thinking, don't even talk to me, I don't really want you, because I'm just very happy. And I thought, fucking hell, this is it, this is H. And I thought, just don't do it again, stick with the booze and stick with powders. So that was the same with clay pigeon shooting and golf, especially clay pigeon shooting.
So that's your skills then, yeah?
That was what I was just naturally really good at. I wasn't a bad footballer, but I think that was something you learn over